Welcome to Rising 8 Minis. I love gold! So now that you're locked in, do you mind doing me a favour? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, like the video, hit the bell button, and don't forget you can ask me anything you want in the comments down below. Let's get into it. So when you're starting any miniature project, it's always important to have a bit of a plan. So I sketched this one out beforehand. I'm going to put a bit of extra effort into this lieutenant. So I had a bit of a mess around, and what I worked out on this miniature is really like the overall theme, but actually that Victorian brass just wasn't quite bright enough, didn't quite pop, there wasn't enough. It's just a bit flat, that's all. So when I started looking at my new guys, I wanted to add a bit more depth in there. Now, if you haven't seen it already, go back and have a look at how I put in the undershading and the base coating, because I actually add some colour theory into that too, which gives a bit more contrast by adding some phthalo green into the shadows. But I also wanted to continue that through, and continue that colour all the way through the rest of the model as well. Stay tuned and we'll find out how. So when we're deciding the colours that we're going to paint our models, it's important to know the way that the colours are going to react to each other, how they look together, and one of the ways we can do that is we can use a colour wheel. Now obviously we're painting a red Blood Angel here, and we want a sort of an older gold look to the armour. So what I'm thinking as an idea is that what would look good with the red is a slight green tinge. A, that will lend an older look to the armour, and B, the green will contrast really nicely with the red and add a bit of extra depth and a bit of extra interest in there. Now the reason for that is if you look at the colour wheel, up here you've got your reds and your oranges and your yellows. Red obviously is Blood Angel armour. You've got your oranges and yellows, all of which are tones of gold. And then on this side, directly opposite to that, and because they're opposites, that's how you generate contrast. You've got your greens, which is opposite your red. Then you're shifting into your sort of your turquoises and teals. So opposite your yellows and oranges on this side, which are gold your armour, you've got your sort of your teals and those sort of bits and pieces, and your reds on here. So if we aim for somewhere around here, then we'll end up with a good strong contrast that will work nicely across the whole piece and really tie it together. That's what we're aiming to do, and that's why we chose phthalo green as a colour. Hope that makes sense. If you've got any questions, drop it down in the comments below. Thanks a lot. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my Victorian brass, adding it to the dry palette, and I'm going to add 1 drop of phthalo green from Golden Acrylics to my 5 drops of Victorian brass. Just going to very quickly mix that up. And I have to say, when I mix this up, I slightly fell in love with this colour. I debated just painting all of the armour this colour, but no, I stuck to my plan. I wanted to paint it an antique gold colour, so I selected this brush. This is actually made by a company called ProArte, and it's a sable brush. And it's the size 2, I believe. And we're just going to paint over all of the armour. So I'm taking a bit of care and adding this in, but this is only going to be a base coat. So we're just going to go over everything that's going to be gold. Is going to be painted over in this green shade. And like I said, I really did fall in love with this colour. It looks really good on the red, but that's not surprising because the colour theory is pretty solid. Red and green go really well together. So we paint over all of the metal parts. Just trying to be a bit more careful, a bit more deliberate with the placement of it, but we don't need to worry about anything other than like shadows and highlights and this sort of thing. It's literally just metallic, so we're just pasting it over all the surfaces. Right, so next we're going to take our Victorian brass. This is just straight Victorian brass, and we're going to cover 90% of the surfaces we've just covered with the green, and we're going to cover that with the brass. We're using the same brush shapes, but we just want to leave a little bit of a hint of that green behind, just to leave a little bit of a taste. Just adds a bit of depth. That's all we're going for. We actually don't want green armour. I sort of do want green armour, but I actually don't want green armour. So we're just going to cover everything over with that, and that's going to looks a little bit ugly at the moment, but every model has an ugly face. But we're just going to very quickly base over everything. This will lead us neatly into the next stage when everything will start to come together. So there you go. This is the end of stage 2, and you can see just a little bit hint of that green coming through from beneath. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about volumes. Now this applies no matter what you're painting. It doesn't matter whether you're painting with metallics or any other colour. The way to make volumes on a 2D or even a 3D shape is to add value. So you can see on the picture in front of you circle or sphere as it is there. So it's obviously got a dark side, and then it's got a lighter side too. That lighter side is painted in a sort of a vaguely sort of circular shape too, getting brighter and brighter and brighter to one point. The shadow side again follows the opposite, so you've got a sort of a crescent moon shape, but in shadow. The contrast between those two is what gives the illusion of a shape. Similarly with the cone, so if you pick a different cone, then you've got a vertical stripe that goes on one side's dark, one side's light, and they mirror, and the shape of those lights and shadows mirrors the shape. Same with a cylinder. So the contrast runs straight down the middle, and then you've got a stripe of brighter light and a stripe of darker light. And that works on when you're painting a miniature as well, because what you're doing is, for example, a piece of armour, like a leg for example, is basically a cylinder, whereas the pauldrons or the ends of the backpack are basically spheres. So you can find those shapes in, say, a Space Marine, and then you can sketch those items on. So when we're painting our non-metallic metal, we're painting our light highlights on in circles facing towards our point of light, and that just gives a bit of an illusion of depth, which just helps transfer onto the miniature. Hope that helps. Okay, so now I've added some Moonstone Alchemy from Scale 75's Metal Alchemy range to the Wet Dry palette, and I'm just starting applying that to the miniature. The idea with this isn't like the previous stage to cover everything almost entirely and just leave a little bit of a hint of the layer below, although there is a bit of that going on. The main aim of this is to add volume, which is the bit we've just talked about. And what we're trying to do here is both trick the eye into thinking that there is light coming from one particular direction, and we're also going to try and trick the eye to think there's more volume than there is on the miniature. Now obviously we're painting a 3D surface here, it's not like we're drawing on paper, but what we're going to do is we're going to paint those various shapes that we talked about before onto our areas of Victorian brass. So wherever I paint onto a circular shape, I'm just painting a little circle of a lighter colour, so particularly the knee pads, the pauldrons, the backs of the backpack, those sort of areas. And where areas are right at the top of the miniature, where they would definitely be catching lots and lots of light, I'm trying to make sure I've painted those in the brighter shade too. So it's reinforcing those visual tricks that will help lead the viewer into thinking that one thing is happening or not. Obviously this is a much smaller scale, and you've often viewing these at 2-3 feet away, so when you're looking at these on a tabletop standard, it's absolutely enough to sell the effect that you need to do. The point of this video was actually a speed painting video, don't forget, so I actually painted these miniatures in about an hour of Space Marine, so I didn't spend lots and lots of time on these. So this is something you absolutely can do at home, and you can absolutely just crack through and use as a little trick just to add a little bit of interest to your miniatures. You're not looking at spending hours and hours and hours on a miniature. We're not making display pieces here. That's not the point. The point of this video is absolutely just to reinforce, just to give you a bit of confidence really that you can just do quick things that will just level up your miniature painting. So I hope that's helped you, and we'll flip to a little shot of what the miniature looked like at the end. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and ask any comments down below. If you want to support the channel further, click on some of the affiliate links in the description below. They're all products I use and rate, and I get a bit of a kickback too, so it's a win-win. Thanks so much for the support. I'll see you next time.